Sweeter Than Honey, an Emerald Duo Podfic, written by CleanLenins on AO3, and read by Heo Stories. Chapter 4. Techno looked at himself in the mirror. Techno looked at himself in the mirror. Techno was trying to convince himself that he was looking at himself in the mirror. It wasn't working. He was too exhausted to cry anymore. His eyes, still red and puffy, had the dark circles, making him look even worse. He hadn't gotten any sleep. He just wanted to curl back up in his bed, hide his head under the blankets, and pretend for just a few more hours that yesterday hadn't happened. But he couldn't. He was a prince. He had to act like a prince. He needed to pull himself back together. Felix was right. It's just hair. It's just hair. His breath hitched, and he tried to focus on the bandage on his face and the uncomfortable, stuffy formal clothing. Not his hair. Anything but his hair. The door to his room quietly clicked open. He didn't turn around to see who it was. "Oh, sweetheart." Dano just stared in the mirror, focusing on the dangling earring Phil had given him, or on the satchel of cookies he'd attached to his belt. Small comforts to focus on. He didn't look up to meet his mother's eyes in the mirror, but when she wrapped her arms around his shoulder, he leaned against her. "I know you're unhappy with this." Techno didn't answer. Not sure he could get the words past the lump in his throat. "I'm so sorry, Techno. I know you like your hair, but this is just for a little while, okay?" Queen Chesil said, pulling Techno away from the mirror. Techno didn't fight it. "A good first impression can do wonders. We've just got to get through this. Then we can go home and everything can go back to normal. You'll see." Techno nodded, looking at the ground as they walked and squeezed his mother's hand. "Here." Queen Chesil pulled her hand away and reached towards the vanity and picked up an obtrusive dark wooden box. Techno slumped even more. Dang it. Of course his mother would remember to grab it. "Do I have to?" Techno said, already knowing the answer. "I know you hate them. I can't say I'm all that fond of them either," Queen Chesil said, unlatching the box. She pulled out a small golden crown. The metal was thin, with very little decoration, but it did have inlaid rubies. She raised it and carefully put it on Techno's head. The inside was padded with colored fabric, pressing tightly against the top of his head in place. "But we are royalty. It's our right and duty." Techno didn't answer. "It's not like it would do any good." The crown, one that he could never live up to, sat heavy on his head. Queen Chesil cupped his cheek and lifted his head up. Techno looked up at her, visibly miserable. "I know this has been really hard, Techno, and you've been so brave." Queen Chesil smiled. "We just have to keep our chins up, put on a strong front, and we can get out of this alive and together." Alive and together. Techno repeated emotionlessly. The Queen let go of his face. "Come on, you need to eat. Your brother said you didn't eat much of your dinner yesterday." Queen Chesil nudged him towards the door. "We all have to be at our best today." "All right." Techno stepped out of the door before the Queen, looking around the drawing room to get an idea of where everyone. "Techie!" Techno stumbled as Emil wrapped her arms around him. Emil, what are you? Techno cut himself off as Emil squeezed tighter. Come on! She interrupted, grabbing his wrist and pulling him along. He nearly tripped, but she just giggled. We're just about to have breakfast. Now that you're finally awake, we can catch you up on everything that's happened. Techno nodded mutely, following his sister to a dark circle of chairs. Assorted breakfast items had been set on a low table in the middle, muffins and bagels and pastries. Mealy smiled brightly, keeping an almost too tight grip on his arm. When they got close to the chairs, Mealy quickly let go of Techno's arm, a smirk on her face. Techno stumbled, catching himself on the arm of the couch. Careful, Mealy, Queen Chesil said, steadying Techno and pulling him to sit beside her on the couch. It's not nice to trip your brother. It's just a little prank. Doesn't mind, right, Techie? Mealy said as she gracefully sat next to Felix. I don't, it's fine. Techno mumbled and pressed closer into the Queen's side. The Queen pushed him away, motioning for him to sit properly. Techno sighed, straightening his spine. I know how siblings are, Chesil. Queen Beetham chuckled. How was your ride over, Techno? Anything interesting happen? It was fun. Techno smiled tiredly. Bad and Scappy were great as ever. They took me through that orchard that I can't see from my window at home, and I got to stay at a waypoint. A waypoint outside? That sounds horrible, Mila said suddenly, aghast. Techno slowly closed his mouth, leaning against Queen Chesil for a moment before correcting his posture. You really missed out by taking that route. Ours was so cool. As soon as we left the palace, everyone who wasn't coming to the ferry ground threw flowers as we went by. They were all calling my name and wished me good luck. I'm sure I heard at least 3 people yell that they want to marry me. Oh, so sweet. I saw them picking up the flowers when I left. Techno said, immediately glanced at him curiously. I heard they were going to dry them and send them out to the palace for 1 week. Oh, they shouldn't have done that, Mila waved off. She leaned forward to daintily pick up a cup of tea. Not just trash now. Why would I want to keep old crushed flowers? They were on the ground, and of course, I can just get more. It would be better off keeping them as a memory of the moment, pressing them into their diaries or something. It's not like they get to see me very often. Techno said awkwardly. Queen Chesil nudged him, pointedly looking at breakfast. Techno leaned forward and grabbed a piece of toast. Well, once the deal's broken, you'll be able to go out more. Yes, and oh, that will be so nice. There are quite a few ladies that have already invited me to their salons. Millie scrunched her nose slightly, but it's not like I'm going to get close to the common people that much. I don't think I could stand the smell. Nor should you, Mil, Felix said. Honestly, you really can't predict how those people will react. They're dangerous. Techno squirmed uncomfortably, not sure what to say to that. His brother noticed. I know you have a lot of friends back at the palace, Techno, but those are people we hired. We can't predict what the average person would do. It's best to not get involved with them at all. I mean, commoners are just people, Felix. They're not going to... They don't just attack people, Techno said. Queen Chesil nodded approvingly. Your brother's right, Felix. They are your people. Look at all they've done for us. You shouldn't have such a low opinion of them, the Queen admonished. It's unbecoming. I don't. I'm just saying that it would be better if Meal didn't. And Techno? Queen Jessel interrupted. You need to be more cautious of people. Not everyone is a friend. I know, Techno said. Belle and Skeppy tell me that all the time. Good. Listen to the gods, sweetheart, Queen Jessel said. Now, I think Techno is going to tell us about his trip over. Yeah, I met this guy named Mother, but you have to tell him about the party, Millie interrupted. Party? What party? Techno asked nervously when Queen Jessel sighed. Surprisingly, it wasn't the Queen that answered. Millie thought it would be a good idea to throw a small party after the proceedings today, Queen Beathan said. We didn't plan for it, but we have the resources. I agree that would be good for morale, especially since everyone is going to be stuck doing such tedious work all day. And who knows? I have a good feeling about today. Maybe the Queen will break the deal on the first day and we can celebrate. Mealy clapped her hands. I think that's a little too optimistic, Mealy, King Beaton said. Fairies are tricky, and even if she decides to end the deal, she will probably dangle it over her heads until the last day. It's just how they operate. Mealy pouted, sipping her tea. Techno, you should eat your toast. It's not going to do much good in your hand, Felix said suddenly. Techno looked at the toast. Oh, right. Techno took a bite out of the corner, chewing mechanically. Maybe the toast was a bad option. The dry bread sucked all the moisture out of his mouth, making it even harder to chew. His stomach growled, but the toast did nothing. He was tempted to pull out Phil's cookies, but Techno looked up at his sister, who was happily munching on her Danish. It really was the worth it. Luckily, no one noticed when Techno stopped eating the toast. A knock at the door had all the royals looking up. Your Highness, a servant said, bowing low. It's time. Techno swallowed hard, glancing at his family. The king and queen looked at each other nervously. What are we waiting for? Millie said brightly. Let's go and get this deal broken already. I want to get home as soon as possible. Right, of course. The queen urged her dress before standing, linking her arm with the king. The royals followed the servant, winding through the gorgeous fairy manor, but not stopping to sightsee. However, when they stepped outside, a loud cheering took Techno aback. The citizens of the country raved and shouted encouragement as the royals were led down the cobbled streets and toward the deeper part of the forest. They threw flowers and garlands and bits of confetti. Tears flowed as they passed, many clasping their hands in prayer. Each had their eyes locked on the royal procession. Well, not exactly. Mealy seemed to glow, her smile incandescent as she waved at the crowd. She blew kisses and coughed flowers from the air before tossing them back. People swooned, cheering her name louder and louder until Techno was sure that the echo would never leave his ears. Just as often, you would see young men and women fluttering their eyelashes at Felix, throwing favors and gifts as well, doing whatever they could to draw the unmarried crown prince's attention. Techno quietly hid in his brother's shadow. As the royals walked, the people fell into step behind, an unofficial parade as all those of the kingdom followed in the royal train to plead before the Queen of all. They travelled together down a narrowing path until they reached a section of the forest that seemed different from the last. A heavy air around it and a sudden hush came over the loud human crowd. A wooden booth, like one used to display food in a market, stood just beside the road. Its back faced the tree line. No weapons are allowed past this point, a tall fairy said, looking slightly nervous. He had his face completely covered with black and white mask, only his multicolored eyes visible. Oh God, the king started. Are not allowed weapons, the fairy said again. Techno noticed its thin trail swooshing back and forth behind them. If you want to speak to the queen of all, you must do so unarmed. That is the rule. The king huffed, looking ready to argue. It will be fine, father, Neil said, smiling at the masked fay kindly, but the fairy wasn't comforted. He slunk away from the smile, looking everywhere to avoid the princess's eye. We don't need weapons for this. We only need to use our words. Still, if something were to happen. The Queen of the Fae has promised you a safe passage to and from her court, the tall Fae said, not making eye contact. As long as you do not cause trouble, the people of your kingdom will be safe. The king didn't seem comforted, but took a steadying breath. Fine, the king said, unlatching the sword from his belt. Father! Enough, this is what we must do, the king said. Techno, you too. Techno started untying his sword, careful not to accidentally drop the satchel of cookies. I will watch over weapons for you. The fairy stepped forward. The fairy reached out to their hands to Techno first. Techno hesitantly handed his blade over. They will be here when you return, just as you left them. They better be, Felix said with a scowl. The fairy seemed to shrink back for a moment before straightening. They stashed their swords under the little booth. Now, all you have to do is follow the road. A guide will meet you inside the forest. Do not stray from the path. That would be, well, bad. With little more than a nod, the rules tread forward, followed by a crowd of citizens at their tail. But with just a step, everything changed. Ever since Techno stepped into the ferry, he had been very surrounded by magic. That was undeniable. Glowing flowers and golden vines weren't something that could appear without magic's aid. But stepping under the shade of the forest felt like something more. The air thick with a sensation he couldn't name. A blanket of power laid over them, stifling and binding. Techno could hear the whispering and muttering of the people behind him, feeling the same thing he did. Ahead of them was a man in a bizarrely cut black suit. He stood in the middle of the road. Sunlight scattered around in bits as the leaves above blocked its rays. He appeared relaxed, an almost lazy posture, with one hand in his pocket as he watched the royal family and their citizens approach. A cigar in between his teeth shed purple smoke. It took a second to realize that the man didn't just have mutton chops. He also had a curling set of ram horns. Looking closer, he could see the man had eyes similar to a sheep as well, squared sideways pupils scanning the royal family. His eyes settled on Techno, and Techno took an instinctual step closer to Felix. Sir, you're the shitheads that have made my life a nightmare the past decade, Fairy said. Congratulations on finding the place and not choking on the pearls or whatever it is rich humans do. Pardon? King Beethan said, slightly shocked. Yeah, I doubt you'll be getting one of those, honestly. I'm gonna say this is probably all's last chance. You can't just leave the kid and go on back to your sad little kingdom and live out your sad little lives. We are here to speak to the queen. Felix scowled. taking a step forward. She is making this decision, not you. You better fucking believe I'm not the one making the decision. I would have just said, go fuck yourself, and you packing. The fairy blew a smoke ring, the smoke shifting into the caricature of a raised middle finger. No hearing needed. You can bring all the fucking people you want to back, but this is sure case of breach of contract. Deal's a deal. Even so, that isn't for you to decide, King Felix said. Normally, it would be. And Felix paused at that, staring at the horned fay as the horned fay took another deep drag of his cigar. People behind shifted uncomfortably. When humans think they can weasel their way out of a deal and try to back insanity or whatever the fuck their excuse is, that fucking paperwork ends up with me. It's just because of the people involved that this even got bumped up to the Queen. All the more reason you should just turn around and... You're not giving up our daughter, Queen Cecil said, a furious scowl on her face. I will not be giving up any of my children. The man slowly blew out more smoke, looking thoughtful. He glanced at each of the royal family. Techno may have been paranoid, but he thought the man's eyes might have stayed on him a second longer than the others. Well, that's your eyes. Fairy shrugged. Throw them away if you want to, I guess. Anyway, you will follow me from this point. Do try to stay on the road. Or don't. That would also solve this headache. The man turned around on heel, strolling along the road and further into the forest. After a moment of hesitance, the king followed as well. The rest of the royal family fell in step. Nervously, Techno fiddled with the emerald earring, needing something to fidget with. Unfortunately, the face suddenly turned around, just in time to notice. Nice earring, kid, the face said. Why did you get it? Do not talk to my son, Queen Jessel hissed. Oh, what? The fairy bat back. You'd get me horribly lost within the enchanted forest, leading me off into a section that not even the queen herself would think to look in. Oh, wait. The face smirked, eyes glittering. That's something I would do, actually. The Fae chewed on his cigar. So where are you? I would say have a little bit of fucking respect before you find out that your deal could have had some worse fucking fine print. The queen closed her mouth, looking pale as she pulled Mealy closer to her. Mealy looked on, intrigued and disturbed. So good. The Fae looked back at Techno. Let's try this again. Nice earring. Why did you get it? A friend gave it to me. Techno answered hesitantly, aware that he couldn't exactly lie. He pretended not to notice the look Mealy gave him. A friend? The fairy pressed. Techno nodded hesitantly. The fairy grinned wide, curious emotion in his eyes. Well, your friend must be something. That's one hell of a gift. Good on you for seeing the value and taking it. Techno didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. The man continued to stare, walking backwards along the road with ease. You can call me Schlatt, little princeling, Schlatt said suddenly. Techno's eyes widened. Obviously not my real name, but it will do. Mr. Schlatt, we are really fortunate to have you showing us the way, Mealy interrupted, smiling brightly at Schlatt. The man giving her his attention. Honestly, I would be completely lost here even without the road. I don't know anything about the forest or... I don't think I told you that you could call me that. Staat interrupted, pointing the cigar in Emily's direction. Princeling over there? Yeah, not you, sweetheart. Oh, Emily said, wrong-footed. Well, then, sir, what can I call you? Sir works. Schlatt waved off. Anyway, Princeling, how you feeling about your stay so far? Having fun? Techno opened his mouth to politely say yes before he stopped. The Fae always knew when you lied. Not really, no, Techno said. The ferry was cool, but that's a shame, though not unexpected, I guess. You're really in a weird fucking situation, Schlatt said. He flicked his cigar, it bouncing off the road and into the grass. What about rooms? The Queen of All was kind enough to give you royals a place to stay instead of those tents, so... Oh, the rooms are so cute, Neil said, clasping her hands together. Why not as this adorable little window that looks out on the harbor and... Don't care, Schlatt said. Honestly, are you always this fucking rude? Like interrupting the conversation here. Oh, well, I didn't mean. I thought the question was for everyone. Did I direct it at everyone? No. Don't know why you'd think that, Schlatt said. He glanced behind him and scoffed. Right, now out of time. Fucking fantastic. Well, anyway. Schlatt fully turned around, waving his hand over the road. The road split, breaking into a fork. But the forked roads didn't stay on the ground. The paths bent impossibly upwards, off the ground, twisting and writhing before they met again at the top. They created a giant cobblestone circle, directly connected to the path under Techno's feet. Like the parting of a curtain, a massive clearing could be viewed through the circle. While the area around the portal looked like a completely normal forest, the area inside looked like a massive outdoor amphitheater. Schlatt walked through, not even glancing back. This way, humans, welcome to the court of the Queen of All, Schlatt said, not even looking back to see if they followed. Techno followed behind his family, the last of the rules to step through. Your fates, whatever they'll be, will be decided here. Techno looked around in awe of what he saw. It was chaotic, beautifully so. The morning sky shone down on them. The court was set in a massive clearing ringed with impossibly high trees. Scraps of colorful fabric strung between the limbs, bells and lanterns scattered on the ground. Under bushes, some broken to pieces but still in use. Tree roots stretched across the ground, creating the many seats that made up the court. Jewels replaced the cobblestones in the paths, each lined with lilies of the valley. A crystal clear pool set off to the side, reflecting in the sun's rays in the shaded rainbow. Many animals lounged around, accompanied by grinning fairies. Foxes slept while people dropped snowberries into their open mouths. Wolf pups nipped at each other as they frolicked about. Birds twittered and drove, creating a whirlwind of song and sound above their heads. But what was truly impressive was the massive throne. Set at the bottom of the amphitheater for all to see, it was made of wood so dark that Techno didn't realize it was wood at first. Gracefully carved reliefs of blackened rose and crisscrossed across the arms and legs. A massive tree behind it grew in such a way that provided a canopy with hanging vines. Each bloomed glowing purple flowers. Techno studied the throne as his family approached, and the size truly astonished him. First he thought it might have been just a bit taller than him, but as they grew closer and closer, he could see that the throne was many times larger than him, the seat far above his head. It was massive, larger than the tallest room in his family's palace. Something else caught his eyes. Hanging from the fine laden branches was a cloth palanquin, green and black. The layers of curtains were pulled closed. It reminded Technoblade of a giant fabric birdhouse more than anything, but the frame was made of gold, shining in the bright morning light. Tassels hung from the curtains, blowing in the breeze. Techno couldn't help but smile for a moment. Trophy husband. For a moment he could have sworn he saw the curtain move. When they were much closer, Schla pointed to a box of seats. It reminded Techno of the benches that ministers sat in while in session, all like what jurors would sit in during court session, except grown from the root of an oak tree. Mila was the first to take her seat, followed by the king and queen. When Felix stepped into the box, Schla clapped a hand on Techno's shoulders. Techno whipped around, eyes wide. "Easy, kid. Man, you're a jumpy one," Schla said, leaning close. Was just going to say that even with all this going on, I hope you don't stress yourself out. Too bad. That's kind of you." Techno backed away. "Not kind." Schla shook his head and grinned. "I just know when to smoosh, you know?" "Not really." Techno admitted. Schla snorted. "Yeah, I bet." Schla grinned wide, then motioned with his head in a direction. Techno looked over. "When the queen calls recess, if you want a moment of quiet to yourself, you can go over to that crooked pine tree. No one will bother you, human or fae. A few of the animals might, though. Can't do much about that. You don't have to use it, but it's there if you need it. Got it?" Yeah, got it." "Right, then up you go, little princeling," Schlatt said, nudging Techno towards his family. "I'll be around to watch the show. I'd offer you some popcorn, but I doubt you'd take it. And I also like my head on my shoulders. I doubt your pops would like me giving you food, you know?" Techno frowned at the fairy, shaking his head no. Schlatt snorted before walking away. "Don't worry about it, princeling," Schlatt called backwards. Techno watched the fairy retreat for a moment before taking a seat. He ignored the sour look Mila was shooting him. The people of the kingdom fanned out through the queen's court. Some sat in the grass or on the rude chairs, or on blankets they had packed. Techno turned around to watch as more and more people poured into the court, seeming to never stop. He watched as each person looked around the space with a mixture of fear and awe. Some carefully reached out to touch bits and baubles scattered around, but most avoided anything obviously magical, with a wide berth as possible. "Techno, turn around," Felix whispered in his ear. "I want here to gawk." Techno blushed before turning back around and looked at his hands in his lap. "Sorry," Techno mumbled, and Felix sighed, sounding thoroughly put out. Techno didn't want to turn around to watch the whispered conversation, shuffle and movement for thousands of people to find a place to sit. He just stared down at his hands, twisting his fingers into the hem of his shirt, glancing at his family from the corner of his eye. They must have waited an hour before anything happened. Techno wasn't sure what drew his eye, but suddenly he was looking at the giant throne. The air shimmered, hazy like the road on a blistering hot day. Except there was no heat, just the sudden smell of roses and pomegranates filling the air. The scent was so strong Techno could taste it on his tongue. Flowers bloomed around the throne, hanging vines bursting to bright purples and golds. Flowers sprang from the ground in full bloom like a wave across the grain, centered at the throne, but continuing onward. Tiggle watched as the people close to the front flinched back when the first petals reached their toes, but the blooms did nothing out of the ordinary. The shimmer in the air twisted in on itself, and out of the nothing stood a tall woman. By tall, Techno meant tall. She must have been around 60 feet tall. From it made sense now. However, he couldn't begin to describe her. Techno had grown up hearing how often his sister had been complimented on her gracefulness, but she was like a newborn calf when it came to the Queen of the Fae. The fairy had yet to move but a single step, and she exuded a poise that would shame the moon. Techno had always heard people talk about his brother's presence, how he took charge of any room he was in. But Techno couldn't stop looking at the Queen of Fae, nearly ready to agree to anything she could possibly ask from just the power of her presence alone. Techno couldn't see her face. The Queen of the Fae wore a wide-brimmed hat with a dark veil decorated in constellations. You could only see the vague outline of dark curly hair falling loose around her shoulders. The queen had feathered wings that shimmered in the sun, shifting between black and purple and the shades Techno had no name for. She sat on her throne regally, resting her arms on the dark wood, her dark purple dress swishing with a sigh as she crossed one leg over the other. Techno wasn't the only one awestruck. He heard many gasps of surprise behind him. He glanced to the side to see his family's reaction. His parents seemed nervous, a little pale as they wrapped their arms around Emil, who sat between them. Felix looked like he bit into a lemon. The taste clear. But what really shocked him was Emil. She looked pissed. Daniel didn't have the time to pick apart why the queen before the Queen of the Fae spoke. It has been a long time since I have seen this many humans in my court. The Queen of the Fae spoke, and Techno turned to look at her. Her voice was filled with amusement. Quite an undertaking, moving so many people for a single cause. I almost feel bad that I had to schedule such an important audience so close to your deadline. This must have been incredibly inconvenient for you. We were willing to do whatever it takes, Your Majesty, when it comes to the safety of our family. King Beethan had to shout to be heard. Queen of the Fae nodded her head magnanimously. Truly, children are a gift worth moving kingdoms for, aren't they? Techno could hear the grin in the Queen of the Fae's voice. Well, I suppose that we should begin. You have been waiting 10 years to plead your case before me. We all know what this is about, so even so, Queen Jessel, if you would explain your request to me in your own words. Honestly, it's more obvious through spoken words than through written. The world seemed to hold its breath, before slowly Techno's mother stood. She held her arms in front of her. Nearly 18 years ago, one of your people, a member of the Fair Folk, took advantage of my despair and tricked me into a cruel deal. The Queen Jessel began. They used their magic to allow me to have children, but then cruelly demanded I give one of my blood as payment. Did you agree to this? The Queen of the Fae asked, tilting her head slightly. At the time, I did. Queen Jessel said, Then this seems like a pretty easy situation. I do not usually interfere with the choices my people make, Queen Jessel. Not in the same way human rulers do, the Queen of the Fae said, sounding more and more amused. What could you have possibly hoped that I would do for you? Deal seems pretty straightforward. No, Queen Jessel said. I may have agreed to this deal, but my husband did not. And the Queen of the Fae said, My daughter is just as much his as she is mine, Queen Jessel argued. He should have a say in this as well, and he says no. I see. I'm not surprised. I've heard that ridiculous argument before, though. It doesn't answer why you feel the need to rally your whole country. Pray tell, what is the vast amount of people that you've brought? Why have them here to convince me? My daughter is a princess. She is of royal blood, Queen Jessel said. This means that she does not belong to just me and my husband. She also belongs to our kingdom. She is just as much theirs. Therefore, the gentry who made the deal with me would have needed to ask their permission first, for he would also be taking a daughter from them. The Queen of the Fae's laughter was music, a balm to the soul that Techno feeling calmer. You could see his mother's shoulders relaxed slightly as well, even if, logically, laughter should not be a good sign. I see. Very clever of you. You did your research, and I would honestly agree. The Queen of the Fae rubbed her head on her hand, the veils shimmering like stars in the night sky. I belong just as much to my people as my people do to me. I agree with your sentiment in this case. Then we will proceed, the Queen of the Fae interrupted. You will use the rules I set for Baldur, I'm correct? Yes, Queen Jessel said fervently. Very well, the Queen of the Fae said. I'll adjust them slightly to fit this situation more. I will listen to the pleas of every person that you have brought. They must tell me how much they need the princess to be in your kingdom, not mine. If all of them can tell me that honestly, I will summon the one who made your deal and have them break the deal between you. If even one person you have brought cannot honestly tell me that their life would be worse off without the princess, then the deal will stand. You must hold your end of the deal and pay the consequences. Understood? Yes, Queen Jessel said, her brow furrowed in concentration. Very well, then let's start. Those in the working class first, the Queen of the Fae said. I would like to hear their position, as they have had the least interaction with the princess. How would their lives be worse without one little pampered royal? Techno took a deep breath, watching from the corner of his eyes the line that was beginning to form. There were a lot of people, only one had to lie. He began to fidget with the end of his shirt again. Techno had been in enough long and drawn-out meetings to know that it didn't take long for you to get mind-numbingly bored. Or at least it didn't take him long to get bored. People tend to say the same things over and over again, presenting them all as their own new ideas. Or they would argue over the smallest details for hours and walk away getting nothing done. Techno hated going to those meetings, but his father always insisted. Felix always seemed to thrive in such places, able to convince even the most stubborn of politicians to eventually see his point of view, which allowed Techno to hide behind his brother, a book hidden under the table while he blocked the whole annoying audio out. No one ever called him out on it, and it made the whole situation so much more bearable. Listening to the parade of people pleading in front of the Queen of the Fae was so much worse. Person after person approached the throne, a mixture of fear and awe, saying some variation of the same thing. Yes, the princess makes the kingdom better. We would be at a loss without him. Yes, we would be devastated if the princess was lost for all time. It would personally make my life more miserable if we lost the princess. Over and over, said in different voices and different cadences, but still the same words. It was incredibly boring. Techno was having more and more trouble not squirming in his seat as time passed. He had nothing to really do except sit quietly and watch, with every plea spoken being the exact same sentiment. He couldn't even try to convince his mind to latch onto the words spoken. He really should be more concerned. This would determine if he lived or died. He had more pressing issues than being bored. He should be focused on every word people spoke, trying to gauge if they were lying or telling the truth. That way he could lie awake all night and worry about whether the next day would be his last. That's what he usually did when he was stressed, focused on it with such intensity that he made himself physically ill. But every time anxiety started to flicker in his chest, it was snuffed out in an instant, brutally and efficiently. Techno fiddled with his earring. The morning passed so slowly, and Techno was feeling worse and worse. He fought against his drooping eyelids, exhausted from his sleepless night, weighing him down. His stomach was aching, so hungry he felt nauseous. And on top of that, the sun had risen high above the trees and seemed determined to boil him while he sat. His family also seemed to be feeling the heat. Mil gently dabbed sweat from her face with her handkerchief. Techno could see the sweat on Felix's brow. A farmer had been speaking for around 20 minutes, talking about each and every characteristic of his sister that he had noticed since the first time he saw her 2 days ago. Techno drooped, feeling incredibly miserable. He just wanted a break. He stiffened, one hand tucked on his shoulder. Sit up straight, Techno, Felix hissed. Come on, that's the most basic thing. Sorry, Techno muttered, straightening his back. A bead of sweat ran down his cheek. A flicker of light beside him caught his eye. No bigger than a palm, a little ball of green light danced through the air as if caught on a non-existent breeze. Techno wouldn't have noticed it in the daylight if it wasn't inches away from his eye. It bumped against his cheek and Techno flinched. He almost turned his head to look, but caught himself. Instead, he stared at it from the corner of his eye. It bumped into his cheek again and made a tiny sound of a wind chime. Then it flew away, floating around to Techno's other side, before bumping against that cheek. Techno bit his lip and winced as it brushed around the scratch on his face. It jingled for a moment before gently brushing against his cheek, much softer. Techno saw Felix turn his head slightly to the side. He met his brother's eye for just a second. Then the little ball of light blinked out, completely gone. Felix gasped, eyes going wide as he looked at something on the other side of Techno. A giant plant sprouted from the wood beside Techno's shoulder. It grew as he watched, twisting towards the air until a giant leaf unfolded right over Techno's head. The leaf was a strange violet color, seeming to sparkle with little purple particles. As soon as the plant blocked the sun from his face, Techno sagged in relief. A gentle breeze blew against his cheek. Techno held tightly to Techno's shoulder, staring up at the plant with concern. But once it grew to its full size, it didn't move again, just swayed slightly in the breeze. Techno glanced up at the Queen of the Fae, who seemed completely focused on the farmer as he described the dress Emil had worn on the way to the realm. He glanced around at the people nearby. The humans who had noticed the sun plant looked warily, but the Fae didn't seem to bat an eye, though one or two met his surprised expression with amusement. Techno looked back at his brother, Felix still looking incredibly worried. I'm fine, Techno whispered. Felix frowned deeper. After a moment of hesitation, Techno threw his arm over Techno's shoulder. Felix squished up against Techno, now somewhat covered in shade. Techno grinned, leaning slightly against his brother for a moment before straightening again. Techno was incredibly grateful for the plant as the day moved forward. He couldn't feel the sun's relentless heat any longer. The plant's shade, the slight breeze, being enough to keep him quite comfortable. But he could see its effects on other people. The humans had retreated to the edges of the court, finding shade in the giant trees and bushes. Some maneuverable blankets to act as makeshift tents to keep the sun off their faces. The least lucky had grabbed large leaves from the ground and were attempting to fan themselves with foliage. However, the rurals had it a bit worse. Maintaining an unbothered front was difficult when you were sweating through clothing. Both King Beaton and Queen Jessel were red-faced and burned, the Queen fanning herself with a large fan, and the King tried his best to wipe his brow with an already sodden handkerchief. Emil was for wear. A pretty emerald-colored dress was not nearly so pretty, where sweat dripped down her neck and stained the silk at her throat. Her golden hair, worn loose, was sticking to her face, slightly mushing the blush she had applied on her cheeks. She wore a strained smile on her face, her eyebrows twitching as she did her best to sit prim and proper through the ordeal. She kept shooting looks at Techno and Felix, the brothers somewhat shaded by the plant. Techno was completely covered, but Felix was able to avoid the worst of the sun as well. Techno tried very hard to avoid his sister's eye, ignoring the slight guiltiness he felt for the situation. Eventually, the Queen of the Fae raised a hand, stopping the person who was approaching her. "It's now past noon. I think this would be a good time for us to take a break. Wouldn't you agree, Queen Jessel?" The Queen of the Fae said. "Yes," the Queen Jessel said with relief. "A break would be an excellent idea." "Good." The Queen of the Fae stood, her dress flowing like the water as she moved. 30 minutes, then? It seems we still have many people to go through. Off. Queen Jessel started to reply, but the Queen of the Fae had already disappeared. Course. "Come on, Techno." Felix nudged his brother to the stand. Techno stood, quickly hopping out of the box. "The servants were supposed to set up a pavilion for us for these recesses." "Thank the gods," Queen Beethan huffed. "I'm broiling in this heat. It's too early in the year for it to be this hot." "Yes," Queen Jessel said bitterly. She stepped down from the box herself. "It is quite an unnatural heat." Miel followed Queen Jessel, looking irritated for a moment before pouting prettily. "We should have had the servants put up some kind of shade on our chairs. This heat is truly unbearable." Miel sighed. She looked at King Beethan tearfully. "It shouldn't be that hard for them to set something like that. We didn't bring anything like that with us, Miel, and we can't just send people back and forth," King Beethan said, holding Queen Jessel's hand as the rulers walked towards that clove pavilion. Techno barely glanced at it, looking around the court. "We didn't anticipate it being this hot, so... So I just have to suffer?" Miel said, her voice breaking. "Father, that's not fair." "I know it's not. I know, Miel," King Beethan sighed, pulling aside the flap of the pavilion to allow Queen Jessel inside. "We will bring such supplies tomorrow, since this is the way the fate chose to act. But we will just have to deal with it today." Miel huffed before following the Queen inside. Felix ducked down as well. King Beethan looked at Techno expectantly. Techno bit his lips. "I want to look around." "Techno, I don't think..." "Scappy and Bear should be around somewhere, alright? They can come with me," Techno said. "I won't do anything rash. I just want to walk around and..." "Wait, Father, you should let him walk around if he wants to." Mealy popped back up, pulling King Beethan's sleeve urgently. "Maybe if he gets some of that energy out, he won't fidget so much. And there's something I wanted to talk to you about." King Beethan sighed deeply, giving Techno a thoughtful look. Techno held his breath, hopefully looking at his father. "Fine." Techno punched the air. "But you stay with your guards, understand? Do not, under any circumstances, try to sneak off from them." "I understand, I will." Techno grinned wide, glancing at his sister. "Thanks, Miel." Miel smiled at him briefly before tugging more insistently on King Beethan's shirt. The king sighed, following his daughter into the pavilion. Techno immediately turned around, looking for Scappy and Bad. They weren't horrified, standing a small distance away from the pavilion, arguing, but that was a given. "It was a perfectly normal name for a dog," Bat gestured wildly. Scabby bit into his sandwich as he gave Bat a deadpan expression. Lucy, are you serious? You're going to give a dog an old lady's name? Scabby said. It's not an old lady's name. It's a dignified name for a dignified little lady. Bat argued back. Dignified? The dog looks like a rat. Scabby shot back. Maybe that's what you should call her. Rat. Lucy does not look like a rat. You take that back. Bat said louder. She kinda does. Techno drawled, drawn closer. The guards were startled at his sudden appearance. Your Highness, what happened to your hair? Bat looked at Techno, appalled. Why, forget your hair, what happened to your face? Scabby said, shoving the sandwich into Bat's hand. So he grabbed Techno's face. He carefully turned his head to look at the bandage. What the fuck? Language, Bat said half-heartedly, drawn closer. Your Highness. It's fine, Techno's face squished up. Can we talk about something else, please? Your Highness. Please? Techno asked again. Bat and Scabby looked at each other, grimacing. But then Bat took a deep breath. Okay, he said. Scabby reluctantly let go of Techno's face. What are you doing here, Your Highness? You're supposed to be with your family. I want to look around. Techno shrugged. Father said it was okay if the two of you were with me. Scabby groaned, putting his head in his hands. Why would he say that? It isn't safe for you to just wander around. Scabby complained. What? Don't you think you can do your job? Techno taunted. Scabby shot him a look. Why are at the very heart of the fairy kingdom without weapons? I'm excellent at my job, but this is such a bad idea. Scabby moaned again. Bat rolled his eyes and handed Scabby back his sandwich. I'm more concerned about His Highness eating. Bat looked over at Techno. You were supposed to grab lunch there. You can't skip meals. Your Highness, it's not healthy. Oh, Techno looked down at his belt and untied the satchel. I have cookies? Scabby dragged his hand down his face. Bat took a steadying breath. Your Highness? It's fine, really. Cookies are perfectly good food, Techno said, as if to prove his point. He opened the satchel and reached inside, pulling one out. Techno once again marveled at Phil's baking skill. It wasn't even cracked or crumbled after just sitting in the satchel. His stomach growled audibly, and Techno shoved the whole cookie in his mouth. His shoulders slumped in relief. Hey, chew your food, Your Highness, Scabby said. Techno gave him a deadpan look. What the fuck are we supposed to do if you choke on our watch? Scabby, language, Bat said again. Techno snorted, a little bit of cooking going the wrong way and causing him to cough. Bat immediately pressed the water skin into his hand. Your Highness, please chew your food. Techno took a long drink of water, not realizing how thirsty he had become. When he finished, he handed the water skin back to Bat. So, exploring? Techno said, biting into another cookie, grinning at the taste and the expressions of his guards. The two shared a long look. Fine, Scabby said. He took a vicious bite out of his sandwich. What exactly did you want to look at? Scabby, Bat said. Scabby opened his mouth to show off his sandwich. Techno snorted as he took another bite of a cookie, something warm settling in his chest. I want to look for Phil, Techno said resolutely. Skeppy and Bat suddenly looked reluctant. Your Highness, he said he would say hi today, and this is like my only chance. Dana said, Come on, you know he won't have a weapon, and he hasn't done anything to hurt me. I want to go and see him. Dana Skeppy scowled as he chewed on his sandwich. Bat crossed his arms and pinched the bridge of his nose. Fine, Bat sighed. Bat? Scabby swallowed his sandwich quickly. You said we can look around, Your Highness, see if we see him. But if we do go looking for him right now, Pat said seriously, then you can't go looking for him later today. You stay with your family and don't go exploring. You won't even ask. Techno grimaced, considering the deal while he chewed on the cookies. He only had 30 minutes. Wasn't much time. If he waited until later, would definitely have more time, but he really wanted to see Phil like right now. Okay, Techno gave him. He grabbed Bat's sleeve and tugged him along. Come on, we're wasting time. We don't have that long. Alright, come on, Skeppy, Bat said, grabbing Skeppy by the wrist. Hang on, let me grab another sandwich before. Nope, let's go find Phil. Techno crowded, tugging his guards behind him. Techno strolled along the court, pausing the people chattering as they ate, laughing or arguing about different points, some describing the awe of speaking to the Queen of the Fae, others complaining about how long the process was taking. When Techno walked by, many of them stopped to stare. Techno wanted to cringe away from the stares. Each time a conversation died from his presence, he felt like hiding behind Bad or Skeppy. But he couldn't hide, he couldn't stop. He munched on the cookies as he walked, much more and more determined to find Phil. But as the minutes ticked on, he grew more frantic at not finding the familiar face. There were just too many people. Your Highness, Ad started to say, wait, just a few more minutes, Techno said, marching on. Let's just look for a few more minutes. Your Highness, you don't have any more time. Bad smiled sadly. Look, your family is already leaving the pavilion. Techno gritted his teeth and turned around. He looked and saw Felix and King Beethan leaving the pavilion, chatting to each other as they headed towards the seat. Just one more minute? We could go looking for one more minute. Techno pressed, starting to turn. Skeppy put his hands on Techno's shoulder. Just one more minute. You're out of time. I'm sorry, Your Highness, Skeppy, he said. Techno balled his hands into fists, incredibly irritated with himself and with Skeppy, before he sighed in defeat. Right, Techno shrugged. I guess it wasn't meant to be. I'm sure you're happy. Your Highness, let's go, Techno said. He crossed his arms for a moment before uncrossing them. I just want the day to be over already. Alright, Your Highness, Bat said gently. Techno huffed, watching his feet as they walked, not interested in looking around anymore. He looked at the satchel for a moment before tying it back onto his belt, the bitter taste of disappointment overtaking the sugar on his tongue. Techno didn't really watch where he was going, too disappointed to take in the scenery around him. He simply followed behind Skeppy, watching the guard's shoes as he walked, and surely not looking the part of a royal prince that he should. His parents would be upset with him for that, but as he approached the seats, he realized they weren't even looking at him. They also weren't sitting in the same spots. Techie! Mealy grinned at him. Sitting under the plant next to Felix. Techno stared as Felix waved bad and scabby away. You're finally back! I was sure you were going to be late. You're never on time. Oh, um, you don't mind switching seats, do you? Millie smiled brightly. I know I didn't ask, but I didn't think you would mind switching. I can't stand that sun anymore. You understand, right? I, yeah, Taking said awkwardly. I don't mind, it's fine. Oh, good. Millie smiled brightly. She motioned further down the seats. You're sitting on Mother's other side, so go on. We don't want the Queen of the Faith to show up. You being, well, you. It wouldn't really help our case, would it? No, Techno said. Right. Techno hopped up, carefully avoiding treading on Emil or his mother's skirt as he made his way to his seat. He sat down on the wooden chair with a huff. He shifted in his seat with slight confusion. Somehow, even the wood of the seat was more comfortable over here. But he must have been mistaken, because as he leaned back, it didn't seem as comfortable as before. He looked upward, his eye catching the cloth palanquin again. He could have sworn he saw movement. Leaning forward slightly, he squinted to see through the fabric. He could just barely make out the shape of a person. Actually, two people. Techno blinked and then grinned. Huh, the trophy husband was in fact here. He couldn't wait to tell Bad and Scappy and Phil. Techno deflated slightly at the thought, but he didn't have a chance to steal the sorrow before one of the figures behind the curtain moved. The Queen was once more stepping out of thin air, her veil and dress swirling around her as she took her seat. Techno squinted at the palanquin, trying to spot the two figures again. Only one was there. Techno snorted in amusement before covering his face with one hand. His mother gave him a disapproving glance. Techno looked away, cheeks slightly pink. He looked up to see the Queen of the Fae looking in his direction. No, wait. She was just looking at his family. She wasn't looking at him specifically. Let's continue where we left off, shall we? The Queen of the Fae said. The same flowers strode forward. Hopefully. No, not you. I think you made your opinion very clear. Let's move on to the next person, shall we? The farmer looked down, crestfallen, but allowed the next person to take their place. Techno grimaced as the person started to talk. The sun already very hot. Only a few more hours, right? Easy. How hard could it be? Techno glanced back up at the palanquin, seeing the figure inside move further back before they were completely hidden. It was a while before Techno noticed the smell. A horrible stench. He grimaced, sniffing the air before turning his head slightly to figure out where it could be coming from. He had been sitting in his seat for a few hours, but luckily the heat had not been nearly as stifling as before. Honestly, a constant gentle breeze had picked up, blowing against his ear for the better part of the day. It wasn't perfect, but he didn't have to worry about melting into a puddle on the ground. He had noticed in the corner of his eye that his siblings were moving around a bit, fidgeting in a way that only Techno had ever seemed to manage. He couldn't turn to look, but he took turns peeking at them from the corner of his eye, and trying to spot the trophy husband in the birdhouse. Now, as he turned to look for the odor, he gasped in shock. The little plant that had grown over his head looked sickly and rotten, its large leaf desiccated and wilted. Bits of the plant's stem appeared to be flaking away like ash in the wind and sticking to his sister's hair. A strange black goo oozed at its root, but it grew from the wooden bench. Miel and Felix had tears pouring down their faces, both clutching handkerchiefs to their noses. King Beaton and Queen Chesil also looked incredibly uncomfortable, leaning slightly away from the now stinking plant. A cursory glance told Techno that the people around them had fled. The only ones near were long-suffering guards, each standing at attention while holding their noses. The wind shifted slightly, the smell cleared for Techno, but the next second it was back, and Techno scrunched up his nose. He sneezed into his elbow twice. "I think this would be a good time to stop," the Queen of the Face said. Techno glanced up to see the fairy wave away the most recent petitioner. "Would you agree, Queen Chesil?" Yes, definitely," Queen Chesil said, her voice slightly nasally. "We would love to." "Good. Then there is just one thing we need to address," the Queen of the Face said. "I heard you are throwing a party tonight." Well, yes," Queen Chesil said as she sniffled. "We thought it would be a good idea to. A party in the house I built, for you to stay in," the Queen of the Face said, tilting her head. "But you didn't even think to invite me." Queen Chesil stared in shock. Of course you are invited, Your Highness. We would never be so rude as not to." "Really? I'm glad to hear," the Queen of the Face said happily, but then she tapped her chin in thought. "Though, as much as I love a party, I'm afraid I will have to refuse. I will send a few of my advisors in my stead, of course. That's only polite. That is," Queen Chesil started, then took a deep breath. "We would be honored to have your advisors at our party." "Fantastic," the Queen of the Face said, clapping her hands together. "Now, at the same time tomorrow, we will meet here and continue. Any that have already given their testimony are more than welcome to leave. I won't keep such hard-working people like farmers and mill workers from their jobs. That would be completely unfair, wouldn't you think?" "That is very understanding of you, Your Highness," Queen Chesil said. "I know," the Queen of the Face said cheerfully. She stood gracefully. "Well then, until tomorrow, Queen Chesil. I hope you and your family have had a grand evening." And just like that, she was gone. Techno sneezed a third time. Millie stood up immediately, just barely avoiding brushing her head against a smelly plant. She jumped down from the seat, closely followed by Felix. Techno glanced one final time up at the palanquin. He couldn't see anyone. The evening light made it near impossible, but he thought he felt eyes on him. He was the last to pass by the stinking plant, and he covered his mouth and nose and passed by as quickly as possible. Why had he not smelled that sooner? He had to jog to catch up to his family, each one moving to get away from the smell. It was so horrible. I felt like I was going to be sick the entire time. Mil fanned herself rapidly. "I still smell it. It's like it's sticking to my clothes and hair." A cruel prank to play, that's for sure. Who knew the Queen of the Fae would be so petty? And Felix was cut off. "I wouldn't finish that sentence if I were you." Techno looked over to see strolling closer. He once again had a cigar between his teeth, this one giving off a blue smoke. You are literally standing in her domain, in her good graces. It'd be really fucking stupid to finish that sentence. Then why in the world would she grow such a thing? Mead demanded, tears still pouring down her eyes. Oh, the magic isn't for Her Majesty, I can tell you that, Schlatt said offhandedly. He looked at the plant closely. The thing suddenly burst into flames. Techno jumped, even though he was nowhere close to it. You really pissed someone off, if I had to guess. That was definitely from the Fae you made that deal with. Certainly matches his magic, that's for sure. He's here? Queen Jessel said, paling. Of course he's here, why wouldn't he be? You fuckers are trying to steal from him. Schlatt rolled his eyes. I know if it were me, I wouldn't let that chick go. I mean, your queen implied she would have to summon. Hang on, you know the fairy behind this? Felix interrupted suddenly. Schlatt scoffed, taking another drag from his cigar. Of course, kinda hard not to, that bastard he is. But don't think I'll go and say shit about him. For once in my life, I'm actually on his side for something. Schlatt said. Who knew? Maybe next pigs will fly or something equally impossible. It's fucking novel, that's for sure. Techno's family seemed at a loss for words as they processed that info. Schlatt flicked his eyes to the side towards the throne before he looked at Techno. So, little princeling, I see you didn't take me up on my offer. Schlatt said, no, that was something else I wanted to do. Techno said, he squirmed on his parents' curious looks. Yeah, I saw you running around this shit. What the fuck were you looking for? Schlatt tilted his head. My friend, Techno said hesitantly. He said he'd be here today. Oh, same friend that gave you that earring? Schlatt used air quotes around the word friend. Yeah. Huh. Schlatt flicked the ash from his cigar. He looked away from Techno and stared up at the pelican. Can't believe he kept you waiting like that. One else will move, am I right? You look really upset when you couldn't find him. Techno grimaced, crossing his arms over his chest. Are you here to guide us again? Techno asked. Schlatt snorted. Avoiding the topic? Fine. It's no skin off my teeth. Schlatt dropped the cigar and crushed it on his foot. A strange patch of moss was the only evidence when he removed his foot. Schlatt turned on heel and started walking in the direction of the portal. Come on then, human royals. Let's get you the fuck out of here so you can go to your shitty little party. Felix scoffed at those words, grabbing Mil's hand and walking away. The king and queen interlocked arms, also following. Techno hesitated. He looked around at all the people once more, trying to spot blonde hair tied up in a ponytail. He drooped, disappointed, and followed his family out. The party was everything he dreaded it would be. It was loud with more people than Techno could ever remember the names and titles for, each of them chit-chatting with each other, pleasantries and lies flowing faster than the wine. There were millions of candles and lanterns spaced around, but the room was dim and made it impossible for him to sneak into a corner and to read. He was stuck in yet another incredibly uncomfortable formal suit, crown stuck precariously on his head, no matter how much he protested against it. He wanted to be nearly anywhere but here. He had entered with his family, as they usually did at such events. His parents had given a grand speech, though it was stilted in places once the king and queen had gotten a glimpse of the coterie of Fae the queen had sent in her stead. Then the music had begun to play, dancers taking their places. Emil and Felix had immediately rushed in to mingle. Techno did not, until his father nudged him, giving him a look. Techno grimaced reluctantly, walking into the crowd, nervously glanced between the groups of people, trying to figure out how to even approach all of these adults. What would he what would he even say? What would he say when they inevitably mentioned his hair? He ignored the curious eyes that watched him hesitate, standing by himself. He knew he would get talking to later. He could already hear his parents' disappointment, their scolding. But he couldn't do this. He couldn't just go up and talk to those politicians and nobles and ministers and he did what any other 13-year-old prince would do. He fled to hang around tables filled with food. At least he wouldn't look so awkward. At least that had been his plan. Dicky! Techno turned from where he had grabbed his 12 strangely flavorless pastry to see his sister rushing towards him. He frowned in confusion before she grabbed his wrist and held him behind him. Uh, Neil? What are you? I just met some people, of the most interesting people. They want to talk to you. Neil half sung. Me? I'm not sure I want to. Come on, Tacky. When's the next time you get to talk to the fairy? Besides that rude goat we spoke to before. Fairy? Are we supposed to stay away from? Techno's voice cracked, staring wide-eyed as his sister dragged him through the crowd. Techno tried his best to avoid bumping into other guests, but while Mio seemed to have no trouble avoiding the crowd, Techno found himself inadvertently being pulled into different people. He cringed as one shot upturn knocked a man's glass of red wine into his shirt. Mil, slow down, Techno said, but Mil paid him no mind, and after nearly tripping a young server, they finally reached Mil's destination. A nervous-looking politician stood next to two very obvious fairies. One was tall with curling horns like a sheep, just like the fairy that had guided them earlier, except this one had thick, puffy white hair that flowed from her face like a cloud. Dressed in a sharp-tailored suit, she looked like a naval captain. She held a glass of champagne in her hand as she listened to the anxious man talk. Beside her was a shorter fairy, but no less obviously magical. He had cropped red hair, but instead of horns, he had ears like a fox, and Techno briefly glimpsed a foxtail behind. He wore a suit similar to the other, but not nearly as neat or tailored, seeming to be more comfortable than such formal events required. Techno tried not to be too jealous of how comfortable the suit looked. I found him, Neil said as she let go of Techno's wrist. Techno rubbed it, hesitantly standing next to his sister. He was stuffing his face at the food table. Understandable. You certainly created quite a selection of food, considering how short you had to prepare. Her puffy-eyed face smiled, looking at Techno curiously. Find anything to your taste? No, not yet, Techno said hesitantly. The Fae nodded her head knowingly. God, you've gotten so picky about your food lately, Mil said. And everyone was working really hard on the food tonight. I know, and it all looks perfect. I just... Techno grimaced, shrugging instead of explaining. I wouldn't worry too much about man, the fox consoled. I can never eat at these kinds of events, too many people around. I hate eating around people. The fox made a theatrical face of disgust. Techno snorted, covering his laughter behind his hand. The fox grinned at him, tail swiping happily. Oh, I can never eat at this kind of events either. There are just so many people to see. I don't want to waste a minute talking to them, Neil said brightly. And I'm sure to you is certainly a pleasure, Your Highness, the human politician got in. Honestly, it will be great when we get this whole ordeal behind us. You'll certainly be the star of the social scene once you make an actual debut. Oh, a debut! That would be so much fun! Neil clapped her hands together. I already started working on it with Mother. I would caution you against being so certain about the deal being broken, the puffy-haired fairy said. She looked back at Neil sadly. You all have certainly put a ton of effort into this, but you do realize the odds are stacked against you, right? Well, I doubt anyone would lie about needing me for the kingdom. That's what the term stated, right? Neil asked, her brow pinching together. It is, but you can never be certain about what it is in the human arms. Some may hold a grudge against you, and then when the gambit fails, the puffy-haired face said kindly, I merely suggest uh, you what you are willing to do if this turns out differently than the way you hope. I have perfect faith that it won't fail, Will said surely. The puffy-haired Faye looked moderately impressed. Really? How can you be so sure? Because it's me. Of course people would miss me, Will said plainly. The puffy-haired his face twisted in distaste, while the fox snorted a laugh. It's true, Mill is incredibly loved. All that meet her can't help but love her. The politician nodded. She's perfect. Techno shifted his weight on his feet and fidgeted with his sleeve, unsure why he was dragged into the conversation. He looked to the side, wondering if he could just politely excuse himself. Don't you agree, Techie? Meal said, drawing attention to him. About what thing? That we don't have anything to worry about, of course. He laughed. What, did you think I want you to agree with me being perfect? That would be a bit self-centered. Techno winced for a second before carefully thinking through his answer. I think we should stay cautious, just because it seems straightforward right now doesn't mean it will remain that way, Techno said. The whole secret that lies in confusing the enemy, so that he cannot fathom our real intent. Sun Tzu, a wise strategist, the puffy-haired face said, approval shining in the eye. He is one of my favorites, Techno said sheepishly. The puffy face smiled wider. It's a good way to look at things. I mean, it sounds like the guy just knew the tricks were the way they go. I can get behind that. The fox added with a sharp grin. And true, yes, they do love our tricks. Techno smiled, standing slightly straighter from the praise. Millie bowed for a moment, before she grinned with a strange sharpness. Now, if there's anything you can say about Techno, it's that he works really hard on his studies, Emil said, wrapping her arms around him in a hug. Techno blushed brightly, looking away sheepishly. Actually, not even just his studies. Doesn't matter what it is, he gives it his all. Well, that's an incredible attitude to have, the puffy-haired face said with a smile. Work ethic is really valuable. It takes a certain kind of character to persevere, to see the goal to the end. You should be proud of that. Techno blushed even brighter. That's really kind of you, Techno said, not looking anyone in the eye as his face burned. Mean squeezed and tighter. Techno leaned into her. It's really great that he knows how to work hard. Mean agreed. Techno preened at those words, his heart warm. Mean rested her head against his head for a moment. Honestly, if he didn't work so hard, he would be completely worthless. Techno felt like he had been slapped by Mule again. He twisted to look at her, and she smiled at him brightly. What? The orange-haired fairy looked shocked at the words. The puffy-haired fairy just stared with her mouth open. I know, I don't mean it to be harsh, but nothing comes naturally to my little brother. Not when compared to me or the crown prince. He has to struggle just to get through the most basic things, Mealy said sweetly. Of course I love him, but he's constantly failing at doing his duty as a prince. He's late, inattentive, uncoordinated. Gods, and he has the worst taste. You should have seen his hair before. Techno winced. The princess is right, of course, the politician said, looking at me with admiration. The youngest prince certainly doesn't compare to his siblings. See, it might be a bit rude, but it's true, Meal said. We love him, but honestly. I'm leaving, the fox said suddenly, backing away with a horrified expression. What? Why? Meal said, looking hurt. We just started talking and I just want. Don't care! I do not care what you want, and I just know I do not want to be caught in the fallout of this shit conversation. I'm out. Have a good life. The fox took another few hesitant steps backward before scurrying off into the crowd. Meal watched after him, confused. What was that about? Meal sounded utterly baffled. Probably had to do with you being incredibly callous to the little princeling. The puffy-haired face scowled, down her champagne. For someone supposedly so sweet as honey, the entire conversation has put a bad taste in my mouth. Excuse me? What are you talking about? Mealy said, smiling through her confusion. I am sweet. I was only speaking the truth. There is truth and there is cruelty. The puffy-haired Faye shook her head, disgusted. Honestly, I see what he meant when he spoke of you. I don't blame him for his choice. Whose choice? What do you mean? Nothing that really concerns you. The puffy-haired Faye turned her back on Meal, not listening when Meal called out after her. What's wrong with them? What did I say? Meal said, baffled. The politician shook his head. I wouldn't worry too much about it, Meal. Fairies are unpredictable, the politician said, but then frowned. But it's probably for the best if you meet up with your parents. An angry fae is not a good thing. Oh, oh, but that's so boring. Techno, what are you doing? Meal said. Techno pushed away from Meal, forcing her to let go and taking two big steps away from her. I'm not worthless, Techno said, crossing his arms. What? Meal asked. I'm not worthless, Techno repeated a little louder. Loud enough that the group close to them looked over with curiosity. Meal stared at him for a second before she rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, Tag, don't be like that. You know I'm right, Meal said. Techno didn't look up at her, his heart in his throat. Just a little constructive criticism. And you know you don't compare next to us. That doesn't mean I'm... Techno, be honest with yourself, Millie scoffed. You know that you don't really contribute anything to this family that Felix and I don't already do better. You can't even be considered a spare. You're more of a... Techno looked up at his sister, tears already running down his cheeks. Millie cut herself off with a sigh. You don't have to make a scene of this, Techno. Grow up. I would love to, Techno spat bitterly. But thanks to your perfect existence, I might not get to. Techno didn't get to enjoy the look of shock on Mil's face before he turned and ran, not listening when someone called after him. Techno curled up in a ball, face pressed into his knees, with his back pressed against the wall behind him. It was uncomfortable. He gnawed wood, pinching and pressing, but he just wanted to sink into it. He wanted to disappear, to pretend that the last day hadn't happened. Heck, he'd happy just to get rid of the last hour. The night hid him in his corner, the stars the only witness to his hiding place. He sobbed, covering his mouth as best he could to muffle the sound. The last thing he needed was something important to stroll by and hear him crying in the corner. He's already made a mess for himself, saying such rude things to me. The last thing he needed was for his family to hear that he was crying in some dingy corner like a baby. Why? Why did he keep messing up? Why did Neil have to be right? He tried so hard. He knew he couldn't be perfect like Felix or Emil. He knew he would always fall short. He tried to be a good prince, a good son, a good brother in his own way. Just for once, he wished that he didn't feel swallowed by the chasm of his own imperfection. He wanted... Was it too much to ask for them to love him with his imperfection, with his differences? He wasn't worthless. He wasn't. He sobbed harder. Here you are. Techno heard a voice. I was wondering where you wandered off to, Your Highness. Techno looked up and saw Phil, standing at the door of the balcony. He was wearing fancier robes than the last time Techno had seen him with. You know, made sense. It was a party. Green robes with a black feathered mantle and cape over his shoulder. Techno turned away and curled his knees up tighter, not wanting to see the same disappointment in Phil's face that he saw on his parents, on his brother, on his sister, on his... That was quite the spectacle. Phil's footsteps grew closer. She really is a piece of work, that one. Man being able to say such nonsense with a straight face. Techno heard the shifting of fabric next to him. Then he felt warm arm gently placed over his shoulder, and Phil's torso pressed against him. Techno hiccuped, pressing his eyes into his knees. Oh, mate. Phil squeezed Techno closer. Techno hiccuped again. What's going through the head of yours, Your Highness? Techno shook his head, not looking up. Phil took him even closer until Techno was basically leaning on Phil. Phil was warm. His arms wrapped around him were comforting. Come on, Your Highness. You can tell me. Phil whispered softly. I won't tell anyone, and if you do, I'll make you some more cookies. Wouldn't that be a treat? Techno's tears stopped for a moment. Just a moment. The memory of the buttery cookies so strong he could swear he tasted them on his tongue. Not the tasteless pastries that he had tried to stomach before Neil had said... Before she had said, His breath hitched, and he tried to get his thoughts. It's not fair. Techno finally choked out. Phil leaned his head against Techno's, humming in thought. What's not fair, mate? Phil asked. Techno shook his head, but Phil pressed. Come on, you can tell me, can't you, Your Highness? I try so hard. It's never enough. I can't. I'm not perfect. Techno shook his head, a sob coming out his throat. Phil sighed, rubbing up and down Techno's arms. Nobody's perfect, mate. Not even your siblings, even if others do seem to think. Yes, they are! Techno snapped, looking up at Phil. Phil shifted to look Techno firmly in the eye. They are always perfect. They never make stupid mistakes or butcher their words or anything less than perfectly delightful. Mate, no one has to no one has to tell them how a prince should act or what is considered acceptable behavior. They just know. No one ever tells them that they're making a fool out of themselves because they don't make a fool out of themselves. They go spat. No one ever tells them to be better because they are already the best, Your Highness. And I'm just, taking no hiccups. I'm trying so hard to be a good prince, and Techno looked back up at Phil, not sure when he looked away, and Phil looked sad, deeply sad as he watched Techno. Techno didn't try to wipe the tears away from his face, just letting them fall. He twitched in surprise when Phil wiped them away for him, gently rubbing his sleeve against Techno's cheek to catch the tears. The kindness of the gesture just made more fall. You're not like them, that's true. Techno's heart twisted at Phil's words. You are such a kind soul, giving so much of yourself to others, even when you probably shouldn't. You are loyal and keep your promises even when it's hard. You are so incredibly clever and funny, Your Highness, and you have excellent taste in horses. Phil smiled, letting his hand just rest on Techno's cheek as Techno listened intently. You are you, Your Highness, and that is something they can never be, Phil said softly, honestly. You are perfect at being you. Don't make yourself lesser by trying to be them. Techno buried his face in Phil's shirt, weeping. Phil wrapped his arms tightly around him, rubbing up and down his back in a comforting motion. Techno held on tighter, wanting the moment to last. He didn't want it to be worn away by some interruption, someone demanding Phil's attention with more important reason than just Techno. For Techno to mess up again, and Phil would take back all of his impossibly nice words. Of a meal of Felix to show up and drag him to his parents, for them to redeem him for his earlier behavior. Techno was so focused on all the way the moment could be ripped away from him. He didn't realize at first that Phil was muttering in his ear. It's going to be alright, Your Highness. I promise. It will be okay, Your Highness. Won't have to worry about this for much longer. It's Technoblade. Technoblade said impulsively. Phil froze, not moving an inch. His hand stopped rubbing circles against Technoblade's neck, simply pressing comfortably against his spine. What was that? Phil asked, a strange emotion in his voice. My name, Technoblade said. It's Technoblade. Phil paused, silence hanging in the air for long enough that Technoblade considered pulling away and then Phil began to laugh, and the laughter was warm and comfortable and eased with something cowering and hurt in his chest. Until a moment later, when something felt off, Techno tried to pull back to look at Phil's face, but Phil pulled him closer, tighter, not letting him go. Oh, Technoblade. And there was something musical in the name that had Technoblade's heart filling with unease, goosebumps running up his arms. My Technoblade, you really are far too trusting, too quick to give away everything you have. You've made this so much easier. Technoblade was finally able to go back to look at Phil. His eyes were glowing blue as something shifted on his shoulders. The thing that Technoblade had assumed was a feathered mantle was a pair of wings. Wait, you... Technoblade tried to pull away, but once more was pulled close with unhuman strength. A hand pressed against his back of his head to keep him in place. He struggled, his heart rate skyrocketing. He whimpered in fear. Shh, that's alright, mate. I'm not going to hurt you. Phil's voice was right next to his ear. Oh, no one is ever going to hurt you again. I'll make sure. And those who have will pay. I just need you to do something for me, okay? It's really simple. Please, let go. Technoblade's voice cracked as he tried to push against the fairy's chest. I know you're afraid. I was going to wait until you went to bed, so you won't have a chance to be afraid, but this will be easier in the long run, now that I have your name. I just need you to go to sleep for me. The fairy's voice was smooth as honey. Technoblade, it's time to go to sleep. Technoblade felt like a puppet cut from its strings, suddenly limp in the fairy's arms. His fingers twitched as he tried to move them. That's it. You're doing a great job. Don't struggle. It won't do you any good anyway. You're mine now. The fairy cooed. He shifted Techno around, putting one arm on the Techno's legs and lifting him from the ground. Technoblade whimpered as his head leaned against Phil's collarbone. His eyes drooped as fog rolled over his thoughts, bringing him under more quickly than a physician's drug. It'll be alright, mate. Just go to sleep. The fairy grinned down at him, great black wings spreading behind him as he walked towards the balcony's edge. Techno got a glimpse of the full moon above. Oh, she's going to love you. Technoblade's eyes blinked shut. He only had a moment of weightlessness as powerful wings beat against the air before he was completely asleep. Phil couldn't help but hum as he soared across the realm, dodging the tricky little wisps that clung to him. They just want a quick snack, a little of magic to send them into giddy whirls through the moonlit night. But Phil didn't have time for that, not when there was something so precious in his arms. He glanced down, and his heart soared almost as high as his wings. Technoblade snored lightly, his eyelashes twitching as he dreamed. It would be a good dream. Philsa demanded it. Only good dreams for his son. Philsa banged, flying down, 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 back to the person he'll call home. She waited for him, sitting near the pool by a throne. I didn't expect you back so soon, my love. Kristen said, tilting her head back to watch Filsa flit above her head. She held out her hands, and Filsa gracefully landed on her palm. I was sure they would keep him up late, with their little silly party and all. I expected it to take longer as well, but Filsa chuckled. He kneeled, laying Technoblade into Kristen's arms, his head supported by her fingers. He gave me his name. Kristen laughed, and the stars seemed to twinkle brighter at the sound. Filsa beamed, swaying to listen to the music of her mirth. What trick did you pull, Filsa, to get the little prince to admit such a thing? Kristen said. It took Phil a moment of blinking to compose himself after hearing his name spoken by her. I had to do very little. Filsa laughed, but then the laughter went sour. He was crying, hurt, sad. He just wanted someone to see him. Oh, she breathed, and Filsa wanted to weep at the sorrow in her voice. She brought her hands closer to her face, looking closely. With her thumb, she carefully rubbed Technoblade's cheek. The bandage still in place. Poor little bird. Filsa looked at his wife's face, and it shifted from sad to soft to possessive. What is his name, my love? She whispered, reverent. Technoblade, Filsa responded, reaching to hold Technoblade's hand in his hands. Technoblade. Kristen tested the name. Techno shivered in his sleep, murmuring something. He's precious. He is, Filsa agreed. He's yours. He's ours, Kristen corrected. Filsa's wings fluttered in excitement. Ours, Filsa agreed. Kristen grinned, and to Filsa it was like the rising of the sun. I thought you said he had long hair, Kristen questioned. And that it was pink? They cut it, Filsa grimaced. They are quite determined to cut away anything they didn't like, and they honestly have terrible taste. Kristen hummed in thought, tilting her head to look at the sky. The full moon shone bright, yet seemed dim toward compared to Kristen's light. Was he already ours when they cut his hair? Kristen said quietly. He had given me thanks. He had eaten our food. He had accepted my gifts. Filsa answered. Shadows in the forest seemed to lengthen, darken, quicken, shivering and whispering displeasure at the growing mantra of injustice, payment, and the consequences of actions taken in ignorance. I see, she said, no emotion in his voice, but the forest shook around her. My love? Yes. Take the diamond chalice and fill it with water from the moon pool, she directed. He beamed at her. Of course. Gently laid Technoblade's hand across the boy's chest, taking a moment to touch his cheek before dropping off his wife's palm. Catching the air, he glided down the edge of the pool. He watched as the chalice formed from the ground itself, making itself the moment the queen gave it permission to exist. Filsa reached towards it, picking the cup up and leaning over the pool. He dipped it. Maybe the pool had been filled with water once, but the shimmering liquid was far more than just water. Silver light trailed from the water itself, moonbeam captured whole. Filza once more launched himself into the air, careful not to spill a drop as he landed on his lover's palm. The air seemed to shiver around Technoblade, the stuffy formal clothing melting and shaping into more comfortable garb, soft pants and a loose-fitting shirt. Techno slapped on, not seeing the evidence of magic in the air. Try not to wake him completely, Kristen said, her voice giddy with excitement. I don't want him to be scared. I'll do my best, Filsa assured, scooting close to Technoblade. Kristen cupped her hand, her fingers lifting Technoblade's body, so he was nearly sitting up, his head lowered to the side. Filsa reached out, shaking Technoblade's shoulder. Technoblade scrunched his eyebrows, but continued to sleep. Filsa shook him again. Technoblade groaned, his eyelids fluttering open for a moment. Phil. Technoblade slurred, still heavy with sleep, confusion evident in his frown. I need you to drink this for me, Technoblade, Filsa said. Technoblade grumbled and Filsa lifted the chalice to his lips. Then you can continue to sleep, okay? Drink this and you can sleep as long as you want. Technoblade muttered something before opening his mouth, careful not to spill a drop. Filsa tilted the chalice. Technoblade frowned deeper, eyes fluttering open for a second, and closed. He swallowed, continuing to drink until the cup was empty. Its purpose finished, the cup dissolved in Filsa's hand. Filsa leaned forward, running his hand through Technoblade's short hair. In the span of a breath, Technoblade had fallen back to sleep, still pulled down by the weight of his own name. Now all he needs is rest, Kristen said, turning to carefully stand. Her footprint steps silent as she walked towards the throne. You watch over him. I'll take care of the pests. Oh, love. You should let me have some fun with them. Filsa teased, causing Kristen to laugh, and oh, how he drank in the sound. You have your part to play. Don't worry, my love. I won't ruin your game. Phil fluttered out of her hand, carefully pushing aside the fabric cover of the palanquin. Stepping aside, he let Kristen reach inside and gently set Technoblade on a pile of soft blankets and pillows. For now, just be there for him. It will be disorienting when he wakes. Of course, I may have the wings of a crow, but I'll watch him like a hawk, Filsa joked, leaning out the palanquin to watch Kristen smile. Good. He's a lovely gift, my love. It makes the headache of entertaining the humans worth it, Kristen said. She kissed her fingertip before putting it against Phil's cheek. He held her finger close, not letting it go. Still, I hope you learned your lesson about messing with people without really thinking it through. No, I'm sure I haven't, Phil said shamelessly, sparking another laugh from the Queen of the Fae. Hard to learn a lesson when you get everything you could want. Well, if that's what you think, then you can stay put right here beside me for the next century. Maybe then you'll reconsider your actions. Queen Kristen launched in her throne, the palanquin hanging just at her eyes. If staying by your side is a punishment, I will continue to misbehave, Filsa said seriously. Queen Kristen just grinned brighter. Enough of your flirting, Kristen said, her cheeks ever so slightly pink as she pulled her veil over her face. Go see your son. Fix the damage that they've done. As you wish, Filsa said, pulling the palanquin's fabric closed, blocking off the outside world. Filsa rushed over to where Techno lay, the boy having curled up on his side. Filsa sat beside him, watching him sleep for a moment, the taste of magic thick around him as it shaped him into something he would be. Filsa smiled softly, running his fingers through Technoblade's hair, starting at the scalp and slowly reaching the ends of each strand. Each pass took longer and longer, the hair growing with each passing second. The brown lightened and lightened and changed, brown to red to a familiar and amusing pink. Vilsa stepped when it reached the length it was 2 days ago, pushing it so it didn't hang in Technoblade's face. Then he laid down beside him, wrapping an arm around him as he pulled him close. One ring stretched out, covering the Technoblade from all sides except his own. Vilsa hummed a sweet lullaby. Outside he could hear his wife harmonizing with the tune. Soon the forest itself sang the little plants to sleep. Excited for the moment when he woke up to his new family. Oh, fucking hell. That's finally done. Huh. Yeah. Maybe I should have split that in 2 episodes. That's... Jesus. Sorry I'm a bit late. I wasn't finished recording yet. Fuck. Well, I hope you enjoy. My voice certainly didn't. But, well, have a nice day.